Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamie Haberl. I'm with the Iowa Healthiest State Initiative, and we're thrilled to partner with the Make It Okay Linn County and the MedQuarter on today's webinar series. And we appreciate that all of you have joined us today. Make It Okay is a community campaign that is statewide, and we're working across the state of Iowa to reduce the stigma around mental illness. And we're thrilled to partner with partners in the Linn County area to bring this campaign to all of you. So just a couple of tips on how to use Zoom today and to make this the best experience as possible. We will be muting all of the microphones on our end just to eliminate any of that background noise. We do ask that you turn on your cameras today because we'd love to see everyone's faces. It also helps our speakers as we know who we're talking to and can see your face. Also, there's a couple of ways that you can view Zoom. Up on the right-hand corner of your screen, there is a speaker view or a gallery view. So depending on which view you want to look at, if you want to see everyone's face or if you just want to see who's speaking at that time, you have those options. Lastly, if you do have questions, we ask that you please use the chat function that you can find at the bottom of your screen and just enter those questions in there, and Carol, the moderator, and I will do our best to make sure that we can follow up with those if time allows. And lastly, today we are recording the session and they will be available on the Iowa Healthy Estates website, and the link to that information will be sent to you later today so that you can share it with others or watch it again. So now it's my pleasure to turn it over to our partner, Carol, who is going to be today's moderator. Carol, it's all yours.
Awesome, thank you. Am I unmuted? All right, thank you. I am going to share my screen quick because I have a few slides that I'm going to go over with you guys. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank you all for being here today and participating in the first of our virtual series. I'm going to go over just a few slides this morning, and then I'll be introducing our panelists and getting to the content that I know you all signed up for. So I'd like to highlight quickly the Make It Okay sponsors in the state: the Healthiest State Initiative, Delta Dental, Mid-Iowa Health Foundation, United Way of Central Iowa, Polk County Health Partners, and Mercy One. As Jamie already shared, Make It Okay is a community campaign to reduce the stigma by increasing understanding and creating caring conversations about mental illness. One of the first things you can do, if you so choose, is to take the pledge to Make It Okay. It's very simple to do. You can go to makeitokay.org/Iowa, where you'll find the pledge there to Make It Okay, as well as a lot of other information. What are some other ways that you can engage in the Make It Okay work? Well, you could request a speaker to come and speak to your place of work or organization. You could become an ambassador yourself, and then you would be able to help spread the word. You can register your workplace at the Make It Okay website as well. And when you do that, you get a toolbox of things that you can do in your workplace to continue to focus on Make It Okay in your workplace. Today is the first of our three-part midweek series. Today's session is Mental Health in the World We Live in Today. Our next session will be on October 28th, and that topic will be Stop the Silence, Stop the Stigma. And on November 18th, we will be focusing on medical and spiritual first aid. And we encourage you to sign up and join us for all of those sessions. We want to highlight some of the efforts that we have been working on here in Linn County this past year. A few weeks ago, we trained over 60 Make It Okay ambassadors. We did a virtual presentation, and we're thrilled to have that many people interested in making it okay and extend the education in the community. We hosted 2 sessions earlier this summer about mental health and COVID. We've developed some posters for employers and schools regarding it's okay to not be okay. We'll have more information soon about a special virtual session that we're going to do on October 7th that's specifically developed for the mental health provider. We know that our mental health workers have been at the front line of COVID, and working through the derecho. And so we wanted to put together a special session just for them. Oops. I don't know what just happened there. Just a second. My computer went funky. Can you still see that on this page, I hope? And we're excited that in January of 2021, we will have a larger community virtual kickoff event. So be watching for that information as well. We also continue to support our employers and agencies and communities by implementing Make It Okay. We have specific groups that are focusing on school and colleges, and we're really trying to get some work going around understanding mental health disparities and race in our community. I always like to highlight crisis resources for individuals when I do sessions like this. We know that talking about mental health and emotional health can sometimes stir up emotions in ourselves. And so please make note of these and use them if you need them or need them in the future. Also want to highlight NAMI of Linn County, which is a fabulous organization here in Linn County and across the country that's dedicated to building better lives for people and families impacted by mental health. They're able to offer referrals, support groups, education classes, community forums, speakers for mental health training. So I really encourage you to go to their website and get more information. Also, other resources in our community, we wanted to highlight Tanager Place, Foundation 2, Unity Point, and Mercy Care here in Cedar Rapids have all been instrumental in supporting our community. Statewide resources, again, the Make It Okay. COVID Recovery Iowa offers lots of free counseling and virtual sessions, so feel free to check that out. Your Life Iowa is always a great resource. And I would encourage you to check out these two podcasts, The Tremendous Upside and The Hilarious World of Depression. I personally subscribe to The Hilarious World of Depression, and I would definitely recommend that for you. And I'm going to show you a video that just highlights the importance of reducing the stigma.
A few years ago, I lost a job because of stigma. Stigma, it prevented me from getting employment. It prevented me from maintaining jobs.
I've lost a lot of good friends due to stigma.
Stigma made me hide my truth and who I really am.
It kept me feeling isolated and just resulted in more loneliness and more opportunity for the illness to continue rather than get better.
Stigma for me made it very difficult to even access services when I first experienced mental illness.
Stigma has made me feel more alone and like I couldn't connect with anyone.
Thank you for taking this time to educate yourselves and learn more.
I appreciate anybody who opens their mind and heart to learning more about mental illness and taking the power away from stigma.
And without your help, we can't completely eradicate the discrimination that people living with mental illness and their family members experience.
I really want to thank you for taking an interest in this and doing this activity, and I hope that that will help others to experience less of that stigma.
I really appreciate that you are taking the time to look within yourself and to think about how stigma does affect someone with a mental illness and how you can help be a part of a solution towards making it easier for someone to access the help that they need.
I really appreciate you taking the first step to end this stigma.
Thank you for reflecting on the impact of stigma.
I want to thank you for making it so that anyone else doesn't have to feel alone and that they know that someone cares for them.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce the panelists for us today, and then we'll get right into the content that I know that you guys are all here to listen to. So first I'd like to introduce Mary Tharp. Mary is the Director of Behavioral Health Services at Mercy Medical Center and the Clinical Supervisor for Mercy Family Counseling. She's a practicing licensed independent social worker with over 30 years of experience. Her special clinical interests include child development, relationships, depression, anxiety, life transitions, family therapy, grief, and trauma. I'd also like to take this opportunity to introduce Okpara Rice. Okpara is the CEO of Tanager Place. He holds a master's degree in social work and executive management and executive scholar certifications. He's the first African-American to hold the executive office at Tanager Place in its more than 140-year history. The issues that fuel his passion and involvement include juvenile justice, access to services, health equity, education, and leadership development. Ben Rogers was first elected to Linn County Board of Supervisors in 2008. He's a passionate advocate for mental wellness and spearheaded Linn County's new Mental Health Access Center that is opening later this year. Ben is open about his own personal experiences with major depression and co-occurring substance use disorder with alcohol. In September, Ben is celebrating 6 years of sobriety. The Reverend Dr. Stephen Knutson is the senior pastor of First Lutheran Church located in the medical district next to PCI. Dr. Knutson has served as the chair of the Faith and Medicine Task Force, a community group formed by the MedQuarter Regional Medical District Board for the purpose of exploring matters of well-being with a holistic integration of medical, spiritual, emotional, and civic perspectives. MedQuarter and Make It Okay Linn County have partnered to bring us this series, and they also are assisting in providing other resources for the sake of the well-being of the whole person. So without further ado, I'm going to get to our speakers. So I'm gonna stop sharing. Thank you. So my first question for the panelists is gonna be directed to Okpara. And Okpara, I was wondering if you'd be willing to share with us some of the challenges that you've seen in this ever-changing 2020 that we're living in. We've experienced COVID-19, obviously, the Black Lives Matter, racial concerns that we're experiencing in our community, and then most recently, the derecho that's hit our community.
Well, I get to just lead off with the heavy question, huh?
Right.
So first of all, it's a pleasure to be with everybody today, and I'm a big fan of the Make It Okay campaign and also for the work that NAMI does. So very happy to be here. Let's just first of all, just be honest. 2020 has really sucked. Let's just start there. That's like baseline foundation for everybody. What we have seen is this year has been filled with nothing but uncertainty. When the pandemic really hit, right, when it really jumped from China over around January, we were sort of watching it. And then really by March, it has transformed what we had considered normal, right? What was our normal routines? In my 46 years, I can't remember ever having a shelter in place in my entire life. And then, and having to wear a mask everywhere you go and being afraid to have human contact. And what that does, it changes who we are. It changes the way we look at the world. It is frightening for everyone. It's up and down the socioeconomic spectrum, right? This affects everybody. That sense of, God, when is this going to be over? Am I going to be next? That trauma that watching people and every day watching the numbers of death tick up is terrifying. Watching loved ones suffer. Again, this has been a year that has really tested our resiliency. When you look at, also the racial unrest and really America coming to reckoning with systematic oppression. The other thing that we watched, and I think we don't talk about in these terms, the George Floyd death, we watched a man die. And so think about the collective trauma that we all experience watching that. Think about as I sat with my two sons who are 14 and 10 and talked to them about what was happening and realizing we are watching this in real time. And so there is no lag in society. Information travels at the speed of light, and misinformation travels at the speed of light, which also adds into our fear and our uncertainty. And also the other thing, when you're in the world where you're providing services, we went from providing services face to face right, to having to do all virtual and what that means, right, for those who get services. Or again, look at us, we're all on Zoom, right? Like all of a sudden this has become part of who we are. But whoever would have thought, again, that this is how we will be interacting and we will be connecting. And so our world, it's really the acknowledgement that the world that we knew has changed, and we may not get back to where we were before, and coming to grips with that. And I think that's sort of the stage of what this, not just COVID-19, the the racial unrest, and then you throw a land hurricane in the mix just for the fun, for kicks and giggles, and again tests our resilience and our resolve, as a community. And it's just sheer exhaustion, as I would say, and talking to people, that they're just exhausted of every curveball that's been thrown. And so having the ability to talk about those feelings and to acknowledge them and validate them for people, I think is really powerful.
Thank you, Opara. Would any of our other panelists care to chime in on that first?
Yeah, maybe just to add, Opara sort of laid out very well just all of the challenges. It's not one, but many. And I think one of the challenges that go with that is that all the ways that we used to cope with change, all the ways we used to try to stay well or healthy, the practices, the patterns, often they had to do with how we gathered with other people, or the ways in which we supported one another, and they are disrupted as well. So it's not just simply the initial disruption, but all the ways in which each of us would take care of ourselves or help others, that's disrupted as well. And we're not sure, I think personally, how to navigate that. We're all still trying to figure out new pathways. Sometimes I feel like I'm riding a unicycle and I'm always having to make these adjustments. And I'm not very good on riding a unicycle. And it's hard work. And I'm kind of hurting about all of that.
And I'll just jump in since this is the Make It Okay. I've been open about my struggles with major depression, as well as just recently celebrating 6 years of sobriety from alcohol. And I'm clawing out right now, I bottom out every once in a while. I call it a funk. I'm sure there's a technical term for it, but for me, it's a funk. And it is because of that sheer exhaustion of, I just don't feel like I can catch a breath or stop for a minute. I have young children, same with Opara and others on here. So the anxiety of what school will look like, and no matter what option, whether you do a hybrid option, the online option, or at school, it creates a lot of anxiety, as well as the disconnectedness from our social gatherings and networks. And like what Dr. Knudsen just said, all of our sort of ways of coping have been disruptive. And that's literally the thing I'm trying to get a hold of right now, is how not to be at like an 8 out of 10 on the frustrated, anxious, angry scale. What coping mechanisms exist where I can get down to a 6 or a 5? And all of them have been disrupted. And just this week, this is the battle I'm having to face with. And I have a support network, family around me, but you're so true. It's the statement, what a long year this month has been, is what I think I'm starting to say every month now. It just feels so exhausting, and it's really challenging for a lot of people. So I just wanted to share that little personal insight.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate that. And you did a wonderful segue into my next question that I'm hoping to direct towards Mary to begin with, which really is, what are some of the situational stressors that for people who have lived experiences and pre-existing conditions, and those people who might be experiencing mental health challenges for the very first time?
Sure, thanks for that. And thank you to everyone in the audience. We're very thrilled to have such a wonderful turnout for this very important topic. Common themes that we have been hearing as mental health providers is this is an invisible, unknown kind of threat. A virus, you think, okay, it's like the flu, but you don't see it. you can't tangibly figure out how to avoid it. And then what we started to hear from people is, well, I'm fearful. I'm gonna get sick. Or what if I make someone else sick? This particular virus, you can walk around and not know that you have it. And so what if I make my family sick? Then you add to that the loss of the routine. People, went out on spring break for school and never went back until, yesterday or Monday for Cedar Rapids schools. So people lost routine. And then as we had to isolate and stay alone, there was an overwhelming sense of isolation and that loss of, oh, I think I'll just call someone and we'll go to dinner. Oh, wait, no, we can't do that. So just then the whole conflicting and constantly changing information. As we learned more about this virus, the information changed. So then what do I believe? And I just heard masks are not something I should do, but now you're telling me I should wear a mask. What type of mask? So just the constant changing landscape under our feet. Just when you thought you had something figured out, like this is going to work for me, then something came along that said, no, that's not the way you should do it. Then an exhaustion that comes from the continuous decisions one has to make throughout their day. This is a very common one, things that you took for granted. Oh, I'll just run to the store. Oh, wait, no, I shouldn't do that. I should go at a certain time, or no, I should order it online. Just the exhaustion, the mental exhaustion that comes from having to make decisions all throughout the day. Financial strain, as we did have to stay separated from each other and stay home and not go to places where we were used to gathering. Businesses closed, businesses changed. They tried to reinvent themselves, but just the financial piece of all of this. And then the lack of supply and resources. I mean, in the beginning, it was toilet paper. And, then it would shift to something else and you'd walk to the canned good aisle and it was like, oh my gosh, there's no canned goods here. So, and then in Iowa and Cedar Rapids greater area in particular, when the derecho happened, then we lost food, we lost shelter, we lost all the basic grounding, the security we had managed to put together for ourselves. Now that was gone. Communication. I couldn't reach my staff. My cell phone didn't work. Our typical phone tree did. What do I do? The office is closed. We have no electricity. And then again, the lack of resources. If you needed a tarp, good luck with that. And then the whole financial piece again hit people very, very hard. So those are just a smattering. I mean, I don't know, pretend for a minute that's all of them, but that's kind of the common ones.
Thanks, Mary. One of the things that you said that hit me that I think many of us are struggling is the shoulds, right? All of those things so there's that sort of element I feel of kind of some judgment sometimes too, the shoulds of what you should be doing. And so I'm sure you're seeing some of those people who are kind of experiencing some mental health challenges for the very first time. Maybe they don't have a long history of anxiety or depression. And so as we really start to reconnect a little bit more with people are going back to school. People are starting to venture out a little bit more. What are some warning signs that maybe we should be looking for? Someone might be feeling suicidal or experiencing a mental health concern for the very first time.
Sure. So suicide or a mental health crisis is really multifactorial. A lot of things kind of come together at the same time and overwhelm the being. And, mental health is like, it's just health in my book. And, Yet when you put hopelessness, isolation, fear, and uncertainty together, that's sort of a perfect recipe for even the most resilient person to struggle. So what I say is you should really watch for very subtle changes, because also as a society and as individuals, we are overly practiced at keeping our distress hidden. I think commonly you ask, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. That, I just thought I should just get a shirt that says I'm fine. So anyway, the subtle things that I would watch to see would be a sense of someone withdrawing. Now that's tricky because we're supposed to isolate. We're not supposed to do a lot of the things, but what I mean by that is someone that you typically could reach on the phone or, any of the safe ways. They don't return calls. They don't respond to your text messages. They just seem more distant. Sleeping more or hardly sleeping at all, or really anything that's a major change for that person. Someone who normally, functions pretty well at 6-7 hours, all of a sudden they feel like they need 12, or they're like, well, I don't really have time to sleep. If someone presents that's usually fairly animated in their speech and their things, and all of a sudden they become very monotone, everything just seems blah, and they just don't have that expression and kind of hopefulness that you are accustomed to hearing. Statements of feeling overwhelmed, trapped, desperate. This is never going to end. Those real sort of total statements like feeling like they're a burden to their family, to their employer, to themselves, if they start to give things away. A sudden switch in their kind of demeanor. So now everything seems fine. You just saw them last week and they seemed very hopeless, but now they're, oh, everything's great, everything's fine. Life has never been better. And then a significant change in substance use or abuse. Reckless behavior, someone, suddenly changes and becomes like, oh, I'm gonna do things that just seem out of character for them. And then neglect in their personal appearance are some of the very common ones.
Thanks, Mary. We do have one question that came in that I think if either you or Opara as mental health professionals would be interested in answering. Someone asked, as a first responder, is validating the feelings the most important thing we can do for mental health support?
I would say validating the feelings and definitely listening. It is not a time to give a lot of advice or tell people, oh, it's going to be okay. It's just listen and reflect back what you hear the person saying.
I would definitely concur with that. And as we had said before, this may be the first time someone is really experiencing this level of stress or exhaustion. And so being able to talk and have a safe outlet to have someone listen is really, really impactful.
Thank you. Before I move on to the next question, is there anybody else who wanted to chime in about warning signs or seeing things that you're seeing in people who are experiencing mental health concerns?
No, I think Mary did a great job laying it out. That was awesome.
All right, thanks, Opara. All right, I'm going to move on to Pastor Steve. This next question I'd like to direct to you. And we've kind of talked a little bit about some coping strategies and healthy ways to address the situations we're going through. I'm seeing some comments come through that are kind of highlighting some of this. But, one of the things that I think people have sort of said, but maybe not in specific words, that we're grieving some things, right? We're grieving changes in our life routine. We're grieving things aren't the way they used to be. So what are some strategies you might give other faith-based leaders, coworkers, friends in terms of how to cope with some of that grief and loss?
I was thinking about it in maybe 3 ways. One about presence, second about perspective, and third, about people. Presence, I had a little devotion with my people where I talked about being present to both the grief and the gratitude that we might be experiencing, and sort of the conflicted feelings we might have about that. Survivor's guilt, you know, I didn't have it as bad as my neighbor, and yet it's still, this is not easy, and I'm struggling as well. So how do I acknowledge what I'm going through without diminishing what my neighbor is going through? Or how do I manage, you know, especially after the derecho? When I think about grief and gratitude, there, you know, as a Christian pastor, we talk about the lament psalms, and there's a whole body of songs or psalms in the Bible that both are a complaint to God, and yet also within the same song will say, yeah, but I'll be okay. I mean, a way in which they acknowledge also a level of thanks that you've been with me at least this far. I think it's okay for us to be present to different feelings existing within us at the same time, you know, to be present to both the frustration and the grief that we're going through, but also to be present to whatever ways in which we might be thankful or have some gratitude, and to let, and even if it's difficult to put those two things together, to say that's okay. I can just be present to what is going on in my life. The second is perspective. And I think about that perspective in a couple of ways. There's a famous sermon that goes, it's Friday, but Sunday's a-comin'. It's Good Friday, but Easter is around the corner. But there's a way in which we might think beyond that, or another way of coming at that. We are all going through an experience of winter where it is hard, and we are waiting for spring to come. And perhaps it's about having perspective that whatever I'm going through, that this will not last forever, that we will get to the other shore. Perhaps what's difficult about it right now, it's not 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, maybe 3 weeks or 3 months or 3 years. And it's the duration, I think, particularly of the COVID, that makes that difficult, but yet still it is about having perspective. I think within faith communities, one of the things that we do is we help one another to have some hindsight, to be able to say, yeah, but here are the stories of how people have gone through times of challenge and they were led through and life got better. And I think some of the things that we do with one another is we help one another to gain perspective by remembering those other stories that maybe we're losing sight of or forgetting. I may be going through a day of suffering, but there will be a better tomorrow. And it's not just, you know, wishful thinking. There is a whole body of history and shared experience where that has actually happened. And I need to hold on to that as I go through my experience right now. I think that's what churches do and faith communities, is they help us to have that longer historical view of how that is true, that it may be winter, but spring will come. I think also spirituality is about people. You might think about it in a couple of ways. One, it's a team sport. It's something that we actually do together. Or sometimes I think about a spirituality is like a dance with other people. Sometimes we're able to dance with others, and that dance is joyful and light and free. Other times all we can do is sit around the edges and watch other people dance, but we're at least in the room. We're at least drawing from others. When I think of the things that churches and religious communities do, is they help people stay connected to the dance. They help people stay connected to something that is hopeful, even when they themselves are not able to feel that or be in it fully in the moment. I reached out to some other congregations as to what they're doing, and you know, like First Lutheran Church, we have a phone tree, and we're calling people and checking in. How you doing? We've been doing that since March. We didn't realize that we'd really need it in August, once we got phones back. You know, people talk about Zoom fatigue, but I also say there is Zoom delight, because I would much rather at least be able to see that person's face and just talk to them on the phone. So I just remind people that there can be a Zoom delight to be able to see the smile and the interaction of another person. And then when I think of spiritual practices, a time of prayer, of speaking to God, I think that is being honest about our grief and our gratitude, but also being able to listen to God. Congregations are doing that in informal ways together on Zoom through prayer gatherings or online Lectio Divina or other ways. Also sermon series that are perhaps more hopeful and pastoral. At our church, we're doing one that's simply The Other Side of Chaos, and about helping people walk through the dynamics of disruption, dislodgement, discombobulation that we're all experiencing, and to see the signs about how God actually may use those experiences to create something new. I think for any of us, perhaps we just simply need to pay attention to this. When we think about spirituality as something we do together, is that we need to stay connected with others in whatever way is possible. Maybe it's a phone call, maybe it's whatever. I think one of the benefits, perhaps, if one could even talk about benefits of a derecho, is that we got to know our neighbors. People that we used to just simply wave hello to, we actually know their names and know something about them. We've had meals together, we've worked together, and there has been a blessing in that, being connected to one another. So a sense of presence to what I'm feeling and going through, and that's okay. A sense of perspective that, you know, there will be another side, spring will come. And also a sense that even my spirituality, there is something about being connected with other people, that it is a team sport. It is about how I reach out and invite other people into a more hopeful future, or myself, I stay open to that, that even though I'm not able to join the dance, I can at least watch others and being drawn along that way.
Thank you, Pastor Steve. Does anybody else want to chime in at all in terms of some strategies in coping with grief during this time?
I mean, I think that was beautifully stated, Pastor.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I think the ratio taught me how many of my neighbors have chainsaws, which actually was rather disturbing to me in a different way. But no, in all seriousness, what you speak about is and for those who don't go to church or who are atheist or that's not part of their orientation, is about fellowship. It's about, again, we are human beings who crave connection. And that we know those who may be out there knows, and Mary laid out those signs so nicely about reaching out to people and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable together, but to have that connection. And sometimes you can save someone's life just by asking them, how are they doing? And you know, and there's a power in that. And I agree with you. I think everything this community has been through, I'm always amazed at how much we rally together. And honestly, I mean, Pastor, you said it best, how everybody just rallied to really make sure everyone was okay. And that is really powerful, but we cannot underestimate the power that fellowship has in our lives. And we have to, no matter what is being thrown at us, we have to find a way to maintain that, and to use these forums that we have to make them our own, to continue to bring people together. So I what you said was beautiful and poetic, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anything you'd like to add? Okay, I am going to take 1 second for a question that's come through that I think is kind of related to what we've been talking about. Oops, and now it disappeared a second. Just a minute. Let me go back. Is asking like how people cope with their own depression. So I think the question sort of is, if you know someone's struggling with depression, and is it okay to ask them how they're coping with depression, and to suggest to other people? Is that okay advice to give? Is it okay, I think, one, to ask, so Ben, I'm going to pick on you just a little bit. Is it okay for me to ask, Ben, how are you coping with your depression right now? And maybe suggest some of those things to other people. Would you find that okay?
Great question. First of all, anyone should be able to, you can't control other people asking you a question, but you can certainly control how you answer it. So if it is something that is touching a nerve, or it's just, you don't feel like comfortable answering. Hopefully you feel empowered to say, either that's a little too personal or a little too raw for me right now, but thank you for your concern. At least you know that someone is concerned. As I sort of alluded to, I go through these ups and downs, and typically people see it happening to me before I'm really noticing it. It's kind of like a tsunami, like an earthquake happens, the water starts to recede, and like, oh, that's funny. And then all of a sudden it's this rush, like this unstoppable force. And people often will see in me sort of the water retreating, like something odd is happening, but maybe he doesn't know it. And then I'm in the middle of it, right? I'm in the midst of it. And certainly asking how they're coping is maybe a great way of indicating to someone you might not be doing well. And it certainly bypasses are you doing okay? Which is a natural question. And I'm happy people ask it, but I think a lot of people want you to say you're okay because it'll make them feel better, right? It's more of a question for them than it is for you, because if you were to surprise them and say, I'm doing terribly, I don't know what their follow-up would be. So that's actually, I think, a great exercise in approaching someone with a mental illness, or brain health or mental wellness. I think the terminology does matter. If you are concerned about someone's brain health, asking, hey, how are you coping? Because that opens a lot more doors than the sort of canned question with the canned response of, how are you? I'm fine. It doesn't really lead to a lot of inquiry. So I think it is okay. And in fact, it's a discussion my wife and I even had yesterday. She doesn't suffer from a mental illness. And she knows what it's like to live with me, but she doesn't have that lived experience. And so she was kind of asking, do you have your coping mechanisms? What are the things that you need to find sort of an outlet, which is really interesting given this whole discussion where most of our outlets have been restricted, or changed or altered. And, she was just kind of doing the same thing as what Pastor Steve talked about. Hey, there is springtime in your winter. And in a very optimistic way, she was kind of saying, listen, there's a light at the end of this tunnel. But I was kind of in the depths of it. And so for me, that light's an oncoming train. So we see two things very differently. And I think for a person without a mental illness, it's hard for them to really recognize and understand that chemical imbalance in the brain, which leads to depression or other issues. So I certainly invite people who are close to me, who know me well, to ask questions. I'm very open about it, but for people who aren't, it's very important to approach it with kindness and compassion, and that there are some people for which they may not want to talk with you about their mental illness, but certainly letting them know that you care is a great first step.
Are there things that you would recommend people don't say? Are there things that, like, ask me this, or I would prefer if people didn't say that, or things that are more offensive?
Again, I can't control what people ask. You can only control the response. Right. But I think we're getting better as a society, hopefully, of finding ways to ask questions, or at least you don't dismiss. You're not dismissive of what the person is going through. By that, I mean, it's dismissive to, why am I depressed? And this is, about me. I grew up both my parents were married. We lived in upper middle class. All of not only were my needs cared for, but my wants. I've had people say, what is there to be sad about? And it's not that life has thrown me such a curveball. It's that I have chemical imbalances in my brain. The most profound thing my mother or any other individual in my life has ever said to me was that, Ben, you just simply have a chemical imbalance. So I do get a little sensitive when people are dismissive, where they think that your situation controls or dictates what hey, you've got everything going for you. Great job, great family. You have a house, you have a car that works, all these things. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't change the fact that I struggle with a mental illness. I would avoid telling people, hey, it's going to be okay. I mean, I think you mean well, but when you're saying, hey, there's light at the end of the tunnel, but they're in a state of mind where, that light seems like the oncoming train. Like life is just hitting me hard. and you're just telling me to be okay, shows that you don't understand. And so I really appreciate the approaches where people will just say, hey, I'm a little concerned, or I notice maybe something's off. Is there anything you'd love to talk about? Or, yeah, what are you doing to cope? Or I don't mind when people say, are you okay? It allows me to be open and honest with them. But I think we have to come at this, no matter what, with care and compassion, and to do our best not to be dismissive, and to just listen. And sometimes offering advice is not what I'm looking for as a person. I have therapists for that. I have a team. I have a Jewish mother. Trust me, I'm going to get advice whether I like it or not. That's instead of the grief and gratitude, I get the guilt. We're very surrounded in my Jewish family with guilt. So anyways, sometimes just listening and not offering that advice is so helpful, because sometimes I just need to lay it out there. I know that there's a solution, but sometimes just let me unload my burden onto you. And if you can shoulder it, that's great. And if you can't, that's also okay. But don't try and solve it for me.
That's excellent. Thank you. And I just want you to know, Ben, that we're getting comments that say things like, I wish there was a like button. I wish there was. So people are appreciating it. I think some of the other things that people have commented on that I think is really, you hit on it so well, that those comments of, what do you have to be depressed about? And so I think for us, and that's why I'm so happy that there's so many people on this session today, that's what we need to learn, is that it's not something that someone can just jump in and try to fix. So thank you for articulating that. I would open it up to the other panelists. Do you have anything else that you'd want to add in terms of, things to say if you have a friend or a family member who's struggling with a mental illness, things to say, things not to say, or other strategies that have worked for you?
I'll just jump in because someone on the comments said, I hate/love that other people are feeling the same way as I am.
Yeah.
This is part of the human condition and experience. It is as simple for me, the profound eye-opening, my life is changed, was that this is just chemical imbalances. I didn't ask for this, but it's happening. Mm-hmm. Similar to someone with diabetes or other issues, I take medicine, but it's a chemical imbalance. And that, to me, when you boil it down, it takes the burden of, I somehow did this to myself, or life has done this to me, or if I only made this much more money or had this type of life, I would be enough. And when people recognize that's just a chemical imbalance, for me, all the pieces fell into place. Now, it was quite a journey. I still had a lot of path to walk down that had not yet unveiled itself, but at least I started a journey knowing this is part of what it means to be human, and I am not different than. This doesn't make me different than. This makes me so much more of a person, because I have to go through these, and I think that can be a powerful way to show your support.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on to kind of one more sort of final question that I would really invite all of our panelists to, give me about a 2 or 3 minute response, and then we can kind of have a discussion. And if there's more questions, feel free to put those in the comment box. So, I know people are going back to school. School started this last week in Cedar Rapids. Other places have gone back to school already. My son, my baby of my family is at UNI starting school. He got tested for COVID twice last week. So, we're going through all of that here too. So as we re-engage, we get back out there and start to do a little bit more. Big Ten football starting back up, all of those things we've been grieving. What are some ways that we can support each other and continue to cope with this anxiety and stress that we're feeling? Because I think the thing that we've learned is There's not an end in sight. I think Opara said that, like the sheer duration of this. So I'd invite you all to just share a little bit about what are some things we can do to cope and help each other through this.
You know, I think that, again, and I commend my friend Ben for his comments. And again, you know, it's listening to each other. But I also want to just really push that there are some amazing mental health practitioners in the field in this community. Multiple agencies, multiple private practices. There are a lot of people who are trained to help. And if you know someone or your child or a loved one, a parent, grandparent, who may just need someone to talk to in a more professional sense, that make that referral, reach out. I've had many emails of people saying, hey, I have a cousin or brother or somebody, what can we do? And to refer them. And we refer amongst each other. It's not a territorial thing. The main thing is we want people to get help and to know that help is out there. There are some gifted clinicians in this community who are here to help. And so as you see people really struggling, or if you yourself are struggling, please reach out. It is the difference of possibly saving someone's life, and knowing that we are all under tremendous stress right now, but know that there are people out there that will help.
Excellent. Who wants to go next? Go, Ben.
Sure, I'll give it a shot. You know, I think as leaders, I think we all try and wear the cape, particularly those who may lead organizations or manage people, and that it's worthy to remember that, you know, even Superman has to be Clark Kent a lot of times. Even he can't be Superman all the time. He has to be a mere mortal. And I think we have to remind ourselves to take the burden of that cape, of that leadership, sometimes off, and ease back into our regular self, to not take all of it on, whether it's our organization and that, or for all of our employees. I know a lot of people who run organizations feel that burden. Easier said than done, but just remember that even superheroes sometimes have to retreat back into their alter ego to recharge and to be themselves, and to find those avenues where you can really touch base to what is you're passionate about, or what brings out your most authentic self, and relieve yourself sometimes of the burden and weight of that cape.
That's great, Ben. That's a great metaphor to use for kids, I would think too. I like that. Mary or Pastor Steve?
Sure, I'll jump in. I think it's very important for all individuals to have a friend, a colleague, someone who will be honest with you, to be checking in with them right now, and to be unafraid to get the feedback of, okay, I'm telling everyone I'm okay. Am I really okay? Or someone that will tell me, you haven't had a day off in the last 15 days. You need to take a day off. So accountability, I don't know what you call it exactly, but just someone that will be honest with you, and they can check in and give each other that feedback.
That's great. Someone who, when you say, are you okay, they're ready to listen when you say, maybe I'm not okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Pastor, anything you want to jump in there?
Yeah, perhaps maybe the one thing I would add to this is, you know, rather than trying to fix one another, what does it mean to be present? And one of the phrases I'll use is, how do you listen somebody else into free speech? To be present in a calm way, so that in your listening, they are able to give voice to where they're at, what they're going through. And how do you do that? I mean, I think there's a way in which, I like what Ben said about take the cape off, be real. But I think also it's about being calm, finding some way so that you can be on the shore when you're talking to someone else. And if they're struggling, you don't have to jump into the water and struggle with them. Somebody needs to stand on the shore and throw a lifeline of some kind to make the observation, or to be a calm presence. And maybe we do that for one another. There are times when we're in the water and we need somebody else on the shore, but perhaps there are some times when we can find a calm center and be there for someone else. So I think about being present in a way that listens someone else into free speech, to be real, and to be calm.
Thank you. I like it. One of the things I'll just sort of, before I turn it back over to Jamie, which I think is what I'm doing towards the end of this, but here's what I love about this community. In the chat box, there's people in there helping each other, giving each other suggestions, you know, about how to take care of yourself and your whole being, and where the physical activity comes into play with that too. So I love that about this community, and I would encourage you all to go to the Make It Okay website, and if you don't know very much about the Make It Okay campaign, bring in an ambassador, because part of what all of that you will learn during those sessions is really about what are some of the signs and what are some things that you can personally do to help reduce the stigma. So I'm going to pass it back off to Jamie, I think, to wrap this up. I don't know that we talked about how I was going to end this.
Well, thanks. I'll just wrap it up as a reminder that we did record today's session, so you will all be receiving an email with links to how you can access that, and feel free to share it with others. We do have a number of Make It Okay ambassador trainings that are actually coming up. They are available and open and at no cost. They're all virtual now. And so I'll make sure that those are included in that follow-up email. So if yourself or anyone of your colleagues are interested in becoming a Make It Okay ambassador, we'd love to have you join us. So appreciate all of our panelists and Carol for moderating, as well as all of our partners through the Make It Okay Linn County, including MedQuarter, for all the support you're doing to help bring Make It Okay to your area and helping us reduce the stigma of mental illness in the state of Iowa. So thanks everyone, and please take care of yourself and stay well.